have been doing this series, Holding Nothing Back, and I like to remind ourselves, because first of all, the last time it was such a long time between the time we started and last week, about what it is to say, what it means to hold nothing back. What it means to hold nothing back. And I got that idea from this book called The Exquisite Risk by Mark Nepo. And here's what he says about holding nothing back. Yeah, really? Let me see. There it is. Now think about holding nothing back, because you probably have an idea of what that is, but here's the basis that I'm starting from. Holding nothing back centers on the perpetual risk to break and reframe our ways of seeing and being in the world. It's breaking and reframing how we see the world and how we engage in the world. Like that's profound kind of stuff. That's an exquisite risk, really. Holding nothing back perceptually means expanding how we see, not what we see, but how we see. How we see. That means from how we're feeling from the inside, how we see things. And it involves the perpetual risk to know God in each moment by putting down all agendas, our stories, and worn-out beliefs. That's the definition that we're using, that I'm using, of what it means to hold nothing back, is to be in that place of exquisite risk, of extraordinary and intense kind of risk, that we're willing to do that. We're willing to put Satan behind us and regardless, go and engage in the world. So that's what it's all about. So this week, here's the basis for the talk this week. Here's the basis for the lesson today. And it's from the book that I've been using for this short series called Living Originally. It is in relationships with others that we find our greatest joys and our greatest challenges. In relationship with others, we most often fall into our unconscious patterns of thought and behavior. It is in relationships to others that we most often find the most difficult being our best self. You recognize that? Our greatest joy and deepest suffering most often occur in relationship to others. And finally, nothing impacts the quality of our relationships more than the quality of our communication. I don't see anybody really disagreeing with any of that, but think about it. How many times have you felt like you haven't been heard? Anybody? Several, yeah. Several in the last few minutes, maybe. Several in the last few minutes. I wonder how many people communicating with us feel like they're not being heard. How about that? We're not being heard. How often do we experience miscommunication? Miscommunication. Yes. And some communication isn't even verbal. What about the cold shoulder or the silent treatment? Have you ever participated in any of that? How about the glare or the hairy eyeball, as we call it, right? That kind of thing. We don't even have to say a word, and we're communicating on that level. We're communicating that way. And in the digital age, our communications go the gamut. You know, back in the day when I was growing up, you had the telephone, the U.S. mail, and what else? And personal one-on-one. That was it. That's all you had. Today, not so much. We have all of the digital ways of communicating, because communication is not only in spoken word, but in written word. And we have the Snapchats and the emails and the Messenger and, oh my gosh, what are the other ones? I can't even think of all of them. The Instagram, the Facebook, just all of them. All those ways to communicate. And even in the Facebook, we have the roll your eyes emoji. You know? You've used it before, I bet. The roll your eyes emoji. We're always communicating that way. But in a large part, like Robert Grummett says, the quality of our communication determines our relationship. Not all of them. We have things like respect and honesty, right? Those are other ways and trust. There are other ways that influence relationship, but right now I'm inviting you to remember and to recall how important communication is in relationships. It's one of my pet peeves. As I'm standing here talking to you and you're all listening to me on one level or another, so often in my life I feel as if I'm not heard. I mean, it's terrible. Renee has to live with it all the time. I'm telling you, she's a saint. Saint Renee. That's the way it's going to be. Last week, when I talked about chaos, I talked about having the intention as we encounter chaos being to create a new life. Those of you who are here, this is the intention. I said the intention when we are dealing with chaos is let's put this intention in our backpack. Let's make it be about creating a new life. I'm going to stick it right in there. Along with the intention to believe in me. Believe in me. This is what I want to carry with me when I encounter chaos. I want these two intentions to be in my backpack. So this week I thought, well, I told you I was going to wear this backpack all the time. And don't you know, we went to Whole Foods after last week to get a salad. And we ran into Jess and Alex at the Whole Foods. And before I got out of my car, I said to Renee, I should probably wear my backpack. Because I told all these guys that they should carry it all the time. These intentions should be with me all the time. And she said, you're not going in there with your backpack on. I was like, all right. Who do I run into? Jess. Where's your backpack? You said you were going to wear it all the time. Well, this week, when we talk about communication, we want to have an intention in ourselves too. We want to walk around all the time with an intention. And the intention we want to carry as we communicate with others is this: personal transformation. I want to walk around with this intention in my backpack as I engage in communication with every single individual. Personal transformation. This is the underlying intention that I want to carry around in my backpack all the time. I don't want to put it down ever. And remember, it was fitting like this last time, and it was hitting me in the head because I want to remember that that's what I'm carrying around. I'm going to let it loose a little bit because I might not get through this otherwise. But that's the intention, the personal transformation. Because we don't communicate in a way to be transformed, personal transformation. We don't communicate then to be understood. We don't communicate to convince somebody else of where we stand. We communicate to be transformed. So every encounter, that's what I want in my backpack. I'm going to use this, and I want to communicate from the intention to be transformed, personally transformed, not the other person transformed, sorry. I can transform you if you just think the way I do. No, personal transformation is me. So what's the first thing? The first thing in a good communication is really nothing about speaking, and it's more about listening. And in order to engage in personal transformation, in communication, we have to become aware. Remember, awareness is the first key. And we are wise to become aware of how we listen. Because there are levels of listening, and there are skill levels in that listening, in those listening levels. The first level of listening is listening to respond. I'm listening to what you say, and in the meantime, I'm really not paying real close attention because I'm deciding how I'm going to rebut everything you say. I'm deciding how you're wrong and I'm going to be right, and I'm deciding how my way is going to be better. Do you ever listen that way? Yeah, we all do. We all listen that way, maybe too much. It's a perfect way to listen if you're in a debate. That's the way to, but is it such a good way to listen if you're in relationship with your loved ones? Maybe, maybe not. It's level 1 listening. It's a low level of listening to respond. Level 2 listening is a listening to be polite. Maybe most of our communication is there. Maybe you can't tell in the political realm, but certainly in our own lives, maybe we listen to be polite most of the time. We listen from an intellectual level, and we simply respond with politeness. But level 3 listening is a little deeper than that. Level 3 listening is really listening to be personally transformed. Is decide to listen from the heart, to listen even beyond the words that someone says, to a deeper place, to really know beyond the words what is happening, and to find a way or to look for a way for it to be transformative for me. You see? And these levels aren't things that we graduate to. It's not like, oh, I'm at a level 3. It's like we're at level 1 sometimes, we're level 2 sometimes, and we're level 3 sometimes. We go between the levels based on the situation. Maybe I don't want to be transformed about my conversation with the guy at the checkout at the grocery store. Maybe it's simply the awareness that I want to be polite. And that's okay. If I am on the debate team, I surely want to do number one, level one listening. Because that's what's going to get me the prize, the best debater, the way to evaluate someone else says and to respond in that way. But if I want to be transformed, it's level 3. And the simple way to think about it is to be aware. Be aware of your listening level. Be aware of how you listen. Do I want to be transformed in this interaction? And then if you are, your listening is from the heart. Remember the story of Daryl Davis? How many of you were here with the story of Daryl Davis? He was the black man who's a jazz musician who decided to befriend Ku Klux Klan wizards. Okay, and he actually befriended one of the men at the Charlottesville rally that the white supremacists had. And his intention, you got to believe, is to be transformed himself. But in that way of being, actually transformed the relationship he had with those men who were part of the KKK. That's a good illustration of levels of listening. Well, you know, the other side of communication is speaking, of course. And it also starts with an awareness. You know, we have some pretty good phrases about the kind of speaking that is really not useful. Things like running at the mouth. You know, like you're running at the mouth. Right? Sometimes maybe we look in the mirror and think, we're running at the mouth. Or the on and on and on and on. My good friend Russell Highland, the minister at Unity, who was one of my mentors, said, you know, all ministers have that gene, you know, the on and on and on and on gene. Yeah, just going on or off on a tangent, sometimes we say. You know, we don't have much awareness if we get into that kind of speaking. The idea is to have awareness of what's coming out of the mouth. To have awareness of what you're writing in an email or a text or a tweet or Facebook. To have an awareness of that. And there's a very simple idea, 3-step idea to help you evaluate, to help us evaluate our speaking and writing. And it's simply this. You may have heard it before. We need the reminder, I would say. Is it true? Is it kind? And is it necessary? Is it true? Is it kind? And is it necessary? Every speaking, every word coming out, every word that we write, to evaluate it along those 3 lines. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? That's walking around with personal transformation as the intention. You know, I talk about truth. You know, I've talked before about don't believe the headlines. Really, are we living the headlines? Have you done any work to really understand an issue? Or are you just repeating what somebody else says? Like, really? That's it? Or remembering this. Whatever you have to say, whatever you call truth is true for you, but it might not be true for anybody else. Because it's only your perspective. The truth that you have is your perspective. That's it. That's all it is. So when we're speaking and writing from the intention of personal transformation, we have to release our attachment to being right. We have to release our attachment to convincing someone else. We have to release it and simply know that whatever the truth is for me, it's for me. Is it true? First litmus test. Is it kind? Now, kind is more than polite. I've talked before about the level of listening. Level 2 is polite. But is it kind? Does it come from your heart? Does it come from a place of love? Does it have no other motivation other than to share? Because anything else but kindness has a motivation that doesn't come from love. So is it kind? Is what I have to share kind? No ulterior motive other than to connect with somebody. Is it necessary? Is it necessary to speak at all? Sometimes the best way to encounter is to not speak at all. Sometimes it is to speak. Is it necessary? Will it contribute to solving a problem? Will it contribute to elevating my own consciousness? Will it give me a personal transformation? Is it true? Is it necessary to evaluate every spoken word and every written word in that way? Because there's a difference in the outcome of our communications and our relationships when we communicate this way, when we have an awareness of how we listen and an awareness of answering those three questions with every communication we have. And when you decide to speak from that intention of being personally transformed, here's what happens. I'm going to tell you. Here's what happens. God itself, love itself, the divine itself is what comes through you into that relationship. That's what I believe. You open up a channel for love to live. That's what happens when you're willing to be personally transformed with no motivation other than that. To open your heart up enough for the Spirit that is God, for the divine, for universal intelligence, whatever your name is, for Creator, to come through you. Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity Movement, says this: love is the great harmonizer. If you allow love to come through you, it is the great harmonizer, and through no effort of yours, love itself will heal that relationship. But we have to be open to it. We have to communicate, listen, and speak in these ways. You know, there's a biblical precedent for this. And in Matthew chapter 25, starting at 35, the king has separated the people into two groups. Right? And he's telling the one side they're going to make it, and the other side they're not. And he goes about it this way. He says, you're going to be coming into the kingdom of heaven. You're going to experience the full love of the Lord. Okay? And he says this, and here's why. He says, I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me a drink. I was homeless and you gave me a room. I was shivering and you gave me clothes. I was sick and you stopped to visit. I was in prison and you came to see me. And the people are dumbfounded, right? You've heard this before. They're like, we never saw you before. What do you mean? And he says, if you've done this to anybody, you've done it to me. That's an illustration of our oneness and connection with each other. We're not separate from anybody else on the spiritual level, on the soul level. We do feel separate in these bodies, but we're not separate. So anytime we do that, we're doing it to love, to the God of our understanding. So I'll ask you this with respect to communication. I wonder if we can answer this, or if we were on the other side with the goats, is the other side, the side that didn't do that. And I'm wondering, I was angry and you ignored me. I was hurting and you walked away. I was yearning to be understood and you didn't have the time. I wanted to be heard and you turned your back on me. We disagreed and you judged me. I wonder how many of us fall in there with our listening and our speaking and tramping over on people. Because the kingdom of heaven isn't a place we get to. It's what we're experiencing right now. And if we're judgmental toward others who have a different opinion, we end up with the goats. We end up with the goats. You see, this oneness is a big deal. And if we can stay in our own lane and communicate this way and stay in our lane, you know what? Everyone is going to want to be in our lane. And it's going to be great because we'll be like, come on in. We'll be letting everybody in. We'll be like driving in this lane and people be zooming by in the other lanes that don't understand what's happening. And we'll be the ones that the world is calling nuts and crazy. Because we're living beyond the chaos that's in front of us. We're living in a communication way that no one else is understanding. And pretty soon, yeah, come on in, break. Come on in. Come on in. This would drive Renee crazy. Come on in. Get in this lane. We're going about 10. You know, come on in. It feels good. Stay in your lane. Stay in your lane when you're communicating about this. Don't judge other people. I want to be the one that says, I was angry and you didn't ignore me. I was hurting and you walked right up to me. I was yearning to be understood and you sat with me for days. I wanted to be heard and you wanted to hear more. We disagreed and instead of judging me, you loved me instead. That's the way I want to be. That's how I want to live. That's personally transformative right there. And that's how I want to communicate. There's one even simpler way to boil this all down. And that is the great spiritual law that says, treat other people how you want to be treated. It's really that simple. Treat others the way you want to be treated, in your listening and in your speaking. It will transform you personally, and as a byproduct, and staying in your lane, everyone will want to be right next to you for the vibration and the love that you channel into this world, to live from the intention of personal transformation. So as we go into meditation right now, I want you to feel what it'll feel like to carry the intention into every communication, into every bit of listening that you do, to carry the intention of personal transformation. To just decide that no matter what, I'm going to carry that intention. And feel what it feels like. Picture that person. Picture that, hey, you don't have to go much outside your family to find the difficult one to deal with, right? To picture carrying personal transformation into that relationship. You're invited to come down front and sit on the cushions if you want to, and we'll meditate for about 10 minutes. Mullah Nasruddin decided to start a flower garden. He prepared the soil and planted the seeds of many beautiful flowers. But when they came up, his garden was filled not just with his chosen flowers, but also overrun by dandelions. He sought out advice from gardeners all over and tried every method known to get rid of them, but to no avail. Finally, he walked all the way to the capital to speak to the royal gardener at the Sheikh's palace. The wise old man had counseled many gardeners before and suggested a variety of remedies to expel the dandelions, but Mullah had tried them all. They sat together in silence for some time, and finally the gardener looked at Nasruddin and said, "Well then, I suggest you learn to love them." So take a deep breath in and out, and begin to bring your consciousness to this room, to be grateful for the time spent in the place of meditation, to open your eyes, to look around, to feel a smile, to feel refreshed, to feel at peace. Amen.